Welcome to 4MileCircus podcast. 4MileCircus is an independent media services company in Brooklyn, New York. I'm one of your hosts, Sean Mannion.
I'm the other host, Nicole.
And we are the people who make films and do the 4MileCircus. On today's episode, we're talking again to Chris Cuffaro, photographer, filmmaker, dude. You've seen his work all over the place.
Photographer, filmmaker,
dude, whatever.
You know, the title I refer to is always tell me, just call me a starving artist.
He is a starving artist. He literally just tried to stab me for some food.
Yep.
So we're talking to him today about crowdfunding and about how it was back in the old days. But when he knows a lot about the old days because he's super old. Before we do that, Nicole, do you have a social media tip for us?
Yes, I have a social media tip for all of us. My social media tip is that you don't have to be on every social media platform, it's a little counterintuitive.
Now she tells me that.
Well, I mean, you should be on as many as possible, but it's about prioritizing because in theory, you want to be where your audience is. You're not going to try to convince people to follow you on Twitter if they don't use Twitter. That's a fool's errand. It's not going to work. If people are on Facebook, you got to go to Facebook where they are. If they're on Snapchat, you unfortunately need to go to Snapchat where they are, or Periscope, or wherever it is that people are hanging out on social media who are people who would be interested in your work. However, limited hours in the day. Only 24, last I checked. Sometimes we need to sleep, do things other than be on social media. Not always realistic to have an active account that you're consistently posting to with quality, optimized content on every social media platform where somebody might possibly be hanging out who'd be interested in you and your work. So if you're just getting started, pick like two that are the most important. Probably going to be Facebook and Twitter. Might be Instagram, might be Snapchat, depends on, what you're doing and how old you are and stuff. But look around, see where you seem to be a good fit and prioritize those platforms, getting those profiles up, figuring out your strategy, getting your content cranked out on a regular basis, consistently, all of that, and kind of stabilize on a few platforms and then expand. But don't go from 0 to 60 all at once because you're going to drop some balls. Something's not going to work out. You're probably going to do a half-assed job on 10 different platforms instead of doing a killer job on 2. And it's better to do a killer job on 2 platforms than a shitty job on 1 million. So start with a couple and expand. Any questions about that? Anything to add,
I
Sean?
agree with you 100%. I only work 3.
Mm-hmm.
My priority is Instagram, Twitter second, Facebook third.
Makes sense, especially because you're a photographer, so having Instagram as a priority.
And Facebook, I never touched Facebook for years. It wasn't until last year when we did crowdfunding that I started doing Facebook again. And it's actually been pretty good for me in that I get contacted from friends from years ago.
Yeah.
I just reconnected with a friend of mine from high school through Facebook. It was really weird.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook, I hate Facebook. Hi, Facebook Live. Hi. I'm Mark Zuckerberg. But I personally kind of hate Facebook. But it's the place where the most people are. Facebook just has way more users across like a broader spectrum of the world's population than any other platform does. And it's good for that exact sort of thing. Like if you're doing crowdfunding, you have to be on Facebook because that's how you get in touch with everybody from your life who'd forgotten about you. So you could pop up and be like, hey, remember me, give me money.
Exactly. No, I found it since I started. I find, is it the best one for me? No, it's number 3. Number 1 definitely is Instagram. Number 2 is Twitter. So I find them. I always kind of say, you would say like, do 1, 2, or 3. I always say let's do 4, which is all of the above. I always choose all of the above with everything I do. So I feel like, and then if you organize yourself and your day, you can do multiple ones, but you just have to have some sort of schedule and plan.
Yeah, and it takes time to figure that out.
Exactly.
And so sometimes it helps to get one solidified, add another one. You might be able to do that within the space of 24 hours.
Yeah, but I'm a big fan of what you just said though, is that you want to organize it because I'm an organization fanatic. So like I think, and if you do organize and you have a schedule, it's a lot easier because I know for me, I know every morning I get up, I tweet a photo of the day and I post my first Instagram photo. And I know that around 12 to 1 o'clock, I'm going to post another Instagram and I'm going to probably, if I have time, to do a tweet. So I kind of always have a little schedule, and it works for me, and I can do all this. And since Facebook is connected to them all, those updates go right to Facebook, and I'm good to go on Facebook.
Absolutely, yeah. We're big fans of scheduling at 4MileCircus, both like creating schedules for yourself and using tools to queue up pre-scheduled social media posts. That's how you
important.
Make it sustainable.
I agree.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm just sharing it with the world.
I like it. I'm all for it. I'm a big, I like social media, and I've learned a lot from it and gained a lot from it. The only part I always complain about is I just wish that ever since Instagram changed that whole thing about where the feed is, that bothers me to
I
this
don't
day.
like that either.
I just want whatever's happening, because I know I don't see everybody's stuff because of the way they set the thing up.
Because there's an algorithm now. It's not just chronological.
The more you like somebody, the more you're going to see their stuff, and I don't want to see all their stuff, and it really bothers me. And I don't have. That's the thing. I really don't have. I have time to post. I just don't have time to look what everybody's posting.
Yep.
And even at home, I keep Twitter up on my computer, and that feed's just rolling along. And every once in a while, I'll just see something going, oh, that was interesting. And I stop it, and then I'll look. But most of the time, I don't have time to sit there and watch what everybody's saying.
No.
But I do have to. What I recommend Twitter, it's too late now. The part I enjoyed Twitter the best for was for the presidential debates.
Those were
I did not watch 1 second of those debates. Instead, I just watched the Twitter feed. And it was more entertaining, funnier, and crazier all at the same time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was the best way to watch debates. I told everybody to watch debates through Twitter.
I watched the first one and was on Twitter at the same time. And then the second two, the first one bothered my wife too much. Just because
it's terrible.
Donald Trump starts talking and she's just like, what? And so she had to leave the room, and then the rest of them, I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna make you watch these, or I'm not gonna make you leave the room so I can watch it. We just would watch other things, and I'd be sitting there on my phone going like, oh my god, really?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
All you had to do
you get all the highlights.
Oh my god.
All you had to do is watch the feed and people reacting to what he was saying or what she's saying or whatever. And I just found it more entertaining, especially when the comedians would chime in, or Silverman or Bill Maher would. It was great. It was like, this is more entertaining than watching the debates themselves.
Yeah, why would you watch it at that point?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Twitter's one I have to periodically go through the list of people I follow, and I start taking up people where I'm like, I don't remember following this person, or this person fills my feed with a lot of things that I just scroll past. I'm sure they're a great person. But I don't care.
I just find, like, I always tell people, again, it's all of the above. It's social media. You just got to do what you can do, and you do the best you can. But also realize you just don't want to spend so much time doing it where you're not doing what you're really supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Oh, and it's easy to get sucked into that. Yeah. And it's.
I mean, it helped us. I mean, that month we did crowdfunding. We were both on it, like full on,
constantly.
Like, he was scheduling stuff for nighttime, and I was doing it. Like, it was like we were covering both coasts. It was a lot. I always tell people that was a lot.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a good segue into our conversation about the project Greatest Hits, See the Spark. Last year.
Yeah, last July.
Last July. Oh God.
I know.
Last July, I helped you with, together we teamed up to do on Seed and Spark a crowdfunding campaign for your documentary, Greatest Hits, which is, why don't you describe what is this documentary kind of fixated on? Because it's a piece of a bigger whole.
Right. It's one piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle, as I like to say. Basically what it is, I'm doing a project that I started 2.5 years ago called Greatest Hits, and it's basically the best of my music work. The idea is we're going to do an event in it looks like February 2017, and it's going to be a massive event in Los Angeles, hopefully 1,000 people. We're going to have live music. We're going to have beautiful, big, gigantic prints. It's going to be basically a celebration of my work and my career in music. And then, so I started it 2.5 years ago putting this project together, but about a year into it, a really good friend of mine suggested, because he was hearing me go crazy every day, he was like, you should do a documentary about the making of this project. And I went, that's more work, but that's a great idea. And then I said, yeah, that is a great idea. And so I decided to do this documentary on the making of the project. And so I'm a firm believer in that every picture has a story. And so that's one of the parts of this project, is telling the stories behind the pictures. But then I also wanted to tell the story of the making of this project. And So it's a lot of storytelling. And if you notice in this day and age we live in, everybody wants to not only tell stories, they want to hear stories. I go, there's a reason why TED Talks is so successful, because people want to sit there and hear people tell stories. Especially I noticed too, is like more than ever do you want to see people want to get old people to tell their stories, whether it's old musicians to old actors, celebrities. People just want to hear their crazy stories of their crazy lives. And so I said, let's do that. And so we've been doing that. And then so the idea was like, let's make a documentary about the making of the project. And that's when I went to Sean and said, help. And we're nice enough to say, okay, let's do it this way. And so, got to raise some money. Yeah. And spend some money, and then raise some more, and then spend some more,
exactly.
And raise some more.
It's that cycle of like just trying to figure it out to make it, and it's a lot. It's a lot. But
I knew just make clear, I knew nothing about crowdfunding, because back in my day, crowdfunding was begging and borrowing.
Right.
And that's why I always felt like I should start beggingandborrowing.com and make that a social media.
You should.
Crowdfunding. I think it would work.
I wonder if it's a thing. But, I'm like, let's do this right now.
Yeah, exactly. Get the URL.
But I mean, I think that's actually, I think, the interesting perspective, because we could talk about that campaign and, we did a big campaign and we worked with Seed and Spark and we did all this blah, blah, blah. But everybody's done that. But I think interesting is you have been around for a while. You have done crowdfunding is not a new thing.
No.
It is, you say begging and borrowing?
Yeah, it's what we used to do back in the day. But I want to mention something about Seed and Spark and that project. Number one, it wouldn't have happened without you. Big time.
Aww.
Major props.
Blaming me.
Basically, you made it. You made the whole thing. I knew nothing about it. And this guy stepped in when he didn't have to and said, here's how we're going to do it, and what we did. I think we were very successful in it in all ways. Did we make $1 million and raise No, but we hit our mark that we set.
Yeah.
And I got all the help I needed. Like the whole thing, it really worked. But what I got out of that, and I think you told me beforehand, and you told me during, and you told me after, was it's a lot of work. Crowdfunding is literally a full-time job. And I don't know if anybody watching and listening knows this. And it's a full-time job. And at the same time we were doing ours, a friend of mine was doing one here in New York for a small movie they were trying to make. And I remember they didn't succeed. I think they were doing it through...
It's the one that you sent me, right? The sci-fi one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they were on Indiegogo.
Yeah. And I just remember just them thinking like, we're just going to put up a post and put up a trailer and we're going to get, the money's just going to pour on in. And it's like, maybe 2-3 years ago when all this started, that worked that way. But now, because everybody's
Not
crowdfunding,
even back then.
it's like, it's hard. And I just remember like every day you and I, like social media, we were doing everything we could. I was calling everybody asking, hey, even if you donate $100, and it was tough. It was really brutal. And I just remember like, look back on it. I just remember like, we couldn't wait till it was over with. Like, I was like, God. And I remember after it was over, it was like, Sean, I don't want to talk to you for a week. I just need a break.
Right. Because I think we were on the phone. Like, maybe it wasn't every day, but it was like every other day. Be like, okay, here's what we're doing. And we were on email constantly, and I was just like, we have to do this. And you're like,
but the cool thing about it is, because like since we're both organization and we're not afraid of doing the work. That's what I think where we were successful at, was like we were so consistent with all our social media, and we were consistent with everything. And you had me, it was like I was making clips, and I was saying, and my pitch video, you show me a better pitch video than my pitch video.
It's an exciting pitch video.
It really, really worked. I mean, if you see what we did compared to what I've seen other people, like, standing in front of a wall going, hey, if you send us $1, send us $100, and we'll make this movie. They make crappy pitch videos out there, like a lot of them. And I think that's really important. And ours was really, really good.
Yeah, yours was good. Yours made the case for why you might want to contribute to this project, which a lot of people don't. They're like, I'm doing a thing.
Yeah.
Give me money.
And excited because I'm making. I mean, I will admit that, especially in some of my earlier attempts, that's usually where I was. I was like, I'm making a thing. That's exciting, right? But I was also only going for like $7,000.
Yeah.
Still.
But then it was like, I'm doing this, and then it was just like, okay, so now you do that, right. And then you go and you turn around and you go like, hey, Nicole, can you help me, Nicole?
Yeah.
Because you remember, like, the same reason that I don't always contribute to stuff is, well, one, I'm broke. But two, also, like, sometimes you forget and you're not keeping track. Like, even if it's like your best friend in the world, you're not always keeping track of, when is it over?
Yeah.
How much time do I have?
And I think that's what I'm saying. Like I think we did the success of that whole campaign for me. And I mean, it sounds really dumb. This is typical me, but like, wasn't the money. It was that we just ran a successful campaign. And I think we did a really good job on every level. It's kind of like the way I've approached my entire career. I always say, everything I do is about like just doing the best you can with what you got, making lemonade out of lemons or applesauce out of apple, like just doing the best you can. And we did that. And again, if we had $1 million, we would have had a billboard in Times Square. Yeah. But we didn't. So
if we had $1 million, we wouldn't have done crowdfunding.
I would have done crowdfunding. I would have told everybody to fuck off, and I would have done my own thing.
And we also got a lot of help from the people at Seed and Spark.
Yeah,
Eric in particular was great and you know, fielding like our occasionally like, wait, what if we do this? Will this work? Was this just, it's like sending those questions, which I'm sure are very, very annoying.
They were very supportive. I like the community that they're building to this day. I think they're doing a really good job. I mean, I really do.
And I would also hope that with that campaign, it's not just about raising the money, but you're building an audience for for the exhibit, for the documentary, for, you're expanding your reach as an artist.
Exactly. And again, I always say to everybody, and I say this to my publicists and to my producers, that like, I am trying to build this 1,000-piece puzzle. The documentary is just one piece. This LA event is just another piece, because my goal is to do this exhibition in 5-6 different cities within a year. And so those are all different pieces. And then it's also the book, it's the catalogs, it's the TV show, wink, wink, because I've talked about that. But like, there's all these different things that I want to do in this big, gigantic piece of puzzle. So, and every piece of this big, gigantic puzzle, I think looks good and to date is really good. And it's all because I've had great help. And I would tell people that the lesson you want to talk about in a bit, but like the lesson I learned early on in my career was, if you surround yourself with the best people possible, you look great. It's just, as a crew, when you get a crew, you get all the best people, and then you just kick back. And like right now, I have a team that is fucking brilliant. My producer is the best I've ever worked with. She's producing my event. She's amazing. My publicist, everybody's just like top notch. And I'm just sitting there, everybody's like, wow, this looks really good. I go, it's them.
Yeah, you just get the best people, and then you just reap all the praise.
Let them do their jobs and get out of their way and let them do their jobs.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah,
getting out of the way.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people, and that comes from I always say, I understand when you work with people who don't know what they're doing, you kind of have to stay on their toes and you got to do things. But when you get really, really good people and you choose the right people, you do stay out of their way. I always tell people the way I work is I give everybody all the information that they need. I tell them straight up, whatever you need, you just tell me and you'll get it. And then I stay out of their way. It goes to, I hate to do your segue for you, but it goes to the whole Pearl Jam video thing.
Yeah.
So when I did Pearl, but it's like when I did my first music video, it was like I said to everybody at the time, I'm going to do a music video. Everybody laughed at me. Well, you never directed. You don't do nothing. And I was like, I can do this. I know I can. So I said, all right, I'm going to go ask Pearl Jam. I'm going to ask Eddie Vedder mainly first. And I'm going to say, will you guys do this? And he said, yes. And then I was like, all right, here's the song, Jeremy. We're going to do this song. And then you know what we're going to do? I'm going to go get the best producer I know, which is this girl, Valerie, who's one of my best friends to this day. And she was a producer of film, television, music videos, everything. I'm going to get the best DP in town. I'm going to get my crew was not a music video crew. My crew was all film people. And so that's a whole different level. So, not to knock any crews, but music video crews are different.
It's a different
than a real film crew. Yeah, it's a serious crew. And so I got all these great people, and I get Pearl Jam, and I get Jeremy, and then everybody at the end of the whole thing, when it was all done, the label, everybody, oh, this is an amazing video. It's great. And you're like sitting there going, I didn't do anything. I just had action and cut, and But I got all these amazing people that made me look good.
Yeah.
And it worked. And that's what I've done ever since. I always tell people, I'm sure we can get, Gigi Hadid and the best makeup and hair team and the best stylist and walk into a studio when any one of us can take pictures and they're going to be great because it's all there for you.
Right.
They don't even have to be in focus. They just are going to be great because it's Gigi Hadid and you're like, wow. So I always tell people that's one of my techniques I've used since I started in Los Angeles. I learned that really quick because there was a photographer there that I really liked and he always did great work. And I just could never understand, why does this stuff look always so amazing? And my boss said, because he works with the best people.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, that's the trick.
You just, you hire all the best people for it. But on that video, on that Jeremy video, it's sort of an example of, because crowdfunding's not new.
Right.
it's the beg. What did you just call
beg
it?
And borrow.
Beg and borrow. So how did you make it happen? What how did you make it happen?
Well, just always tell people this. There's a few places that there's a book that wrote a chapter about this whole thing. A friend of mine wrote a book on Pearl Jam, and other people have talked about it. I finally wrote the definitive blog post last year about it, and because I wanted to get the facts straight, because people started writing things that I was like, what? They weren't there. How do they know? But basically what I did was, when I decided to do it, when it was all like, okay, we're going to do this. I knew I'm going to do this. I was in Seattle. I'd asked Eddie, we were drunk, and I said to him, hey, will you guys do this? He said, I'll ask the band and the label. So they said yes. And I said, okay, cool. And then when they said yes, I was like, I came home and I remember just saying to everybody, like, well, now what? And you need money. And so that's when I called Valerie and I said, Valerie, please help me. And she's like, okay, I'll do this for you. And she just said, what's your budget? I go, I have no idea. I've never done this before. So she said, all right. So I had to give her the treatment. Back in those days, you wrote a treatment. And since I was never a good writer, and I'm not lying when I say this, the treatment basically read...
No, you really are terrible.
The treatment was basically C band play, go band go. Like, I always tell people, because I had a third grade vocabulary because I never went to school. So I was just like, I knew what I wanted. I knew the visual. I just want the band spinning. I want it all done individually. It's all against black. I knew these basic things. And so we had my other best friend, Erin. She ended up writing me a really great treatment. And then I turned that into the band. They approved it and said, all right, let's do this. And so then Valerie's like, all right, let's figure out the budget. So I remember the first budget was like $50,000. And I was like, for a music video, are you kidding me? Like, it's 2 days shoot. And I couldn't believe it. So we ended up getting it down to 20, because that's where she started calling in the favors, free camera package. I told you, like, doubling up the film, going from 24 frames to 12 frames doubles up your film. All of a sudden you have the 500 feet turns to 1,000 feet. We thought, oh, we'll save money there. And then getting a tight crew. And then she was like, I was like, let's just hire a bunch of friends. And she's like, no, because that'll slow you down and you won't get as much done. And And so she was like that. Like, I always tell people, I was like, oh, here's the creatives. And I just then said, how do you do this? And she stepped in and, just said, here's where we're going to use the money and how we're going to use the money. So the budget was like $20,000. And then I said, I have no money. I mean, I had a few dollars, but I didn't really want to spend it all on that. So I went to the crowdfunding began. The first person I went to was my agent. And I asked her if she would front me some money. She gave me $5,000. Then I went to another friend and said, I need money. I need 15,000. And they said, I'll give you 1,000. I went to another friend and said, I need money. And they said, I'll give you another 1,000. And then I realized, and then it started slowing down. Like, everybody was saying no. And everybody was just saying, like, sorry, I can't help. And I was like, so then at that point I had this massive guitar collection. I don't know how to play guitar, but I had like 40 guitars and basses and drum kits. And I had all this gear that companies would give me. So I sold half the collection to get the rest of the money. And it was a good collection. It would be worth $100,000 today if I had it. Like, I had guitars signed by Kurt Cobain. I had guitars signed by Mark Knopfler. I had this really good collection. So I sold all that off just to get to the $20,000. And it was, I always tell people, looking back on it now, I always say, I'm not surprised I did that. Looking back on it now, it's like everything I do is you just do what you can. You just do it, whatever it takes. And so I did. And then we got the money and we did 2 shoot days. And then like 2 months into editing, I realized that I needed another $5,000. And so I had to go borrow that $5,000 from my agent again. Because nobody believed that I could do it. That was the hard part. That was the part that like annoyed me and probably motivated me, was just because like everybody does that to me. Like, they just don't think you can do it. Oh, you can't do this. You can't direct it. You're not a director. You didn't go to film school. And you're like, so?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that got to do with anything?
Nothing.
And and back in those days, but back in those days, too, you got to understand that the record labels would look at, you're a photographer, you know how to do still pictures. This is moving. You can't handle moving people. People move. You don't know that, but they move. And you're like, what the fuck? And you're like, they put you in that box. You're a photographer. You can't do that. You can't think outside. And people, I'm sorry to say that in all my years, like 80% of the people I work with are idiots. And the 80% out there, you know who you are. No, but they did. And they would tell you couldn't do it. So that was like, go fuck yourself. I'll do this. And so that was like the big, huge thing. The motivation was just like to show everybody that I can do that. And I always tell people, you can ask Valerie. I remember telling her, weeks to shooting, I said to her, the only reason I'm doing this is to show people I can do this. I don't give a fuck where it ends up or what, even if it gets used or whatever. And it didn't get used. It got shelved. So I always tell people that people always doesn't that bother you? Because they made another one with Mark Pellington directing and it won Video of the Year. And I was like, I didn't care. I succeeded because I did it to show people I could do it. And I did it. And mine is better. To this day, you can go on YouTube. It's got 6 million views.
For those of you who are watching the live stream, I put the link on the...
Oh, good for you.
That's what I'm doing half the time. I'm like, let me
no, that's good because like I said, the beauty of it is like the best compliments I got when I finished it was the band loved it, but the best compliment I got was from my agent who ended up loaning me money was, it looks like your still work. Like it has that feel. It didn't look like something else. It looked like a still, that my style, my work was there. And so she could see that in the video. And then I felt like the other successful thing I think out of it that I got was in the last few years where you do look on YouTube and I every once in a while see a good comment there saying, yeah, this is way better. Or this is like, this is still holds up. I just want things to last.
Well, and there's also one that I found, I think sometime last year when we were working on our project where there's a side-by-side comparison of the two.
Yeah.
And actually there's a side-by-side comparison between the Mark Pellington like MTV one,
right?
Like some like director's cut on a different cut of the Mark Pellington one, and yours. Like it's a 3-way side by side, and when you look at them, I don't know. I'm biased,
but I think that
yours does look better.
I do, and I think that the thing I always say to everybody is, I think mine represents who the band was at that time better, because they had gone from, if you look at their music videos at the time, if you guys knew them or whatever, they started off with a live, which was a live video shot at the OK Hotel. No, not the OK. It was shot at the Rock Candy in Seattle. It was a live black and white raw performance. Amazing. That's what put them on the map, was at their live shows, and it was raw. The next one they did was Even Flow. Yep. Live, color, Paramount, Josh Taft did a great job on that one, capturing the band, who they are. So all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm getting them to go, all right, we're going to go in the studio. And they're like, ugh, but we're going to do a studio. Because they were all like anti-videos. They didn't want to do anything. And the way we did mine was I shot each band member on a turntable, and it spinned, as they were turning, the camera was going back and forth and shooting. And we just did like, each guy was like 5 or 6 takes. Except Eddie, I think we did 10. And I think my video is the perfect progression from those 2 live videos. I think it captures them. It's not polished like Pellington's. It's not over conceptual. The ideas, the images that we put in of the boy going through his madness was those images were Eddie and I's collaboration on those images, what we wanted them to say, because we wanted to be not so literal, whereas Pellington's is very literal. Yeah. So we did that. So to me, I don't know. Not to be biased, but I think mine's better.
Well, you'll put those in the show notes, right? So our listeners at home can watch that side by side.
Compare.
Oh God, yeah.
And obviously,
I'll find the side by side,
and then let me know.
Yeah.
And then everybody email Chris. No. Just tell Chris online that you like his better, and if you don't like his better, don't tell him that.
Yeah, exactly. And Mark Pellington, you're a brilliant director, and he's done amazing things. But I'm sorry. My Pearl Jam video is better.
I mean, I think you even spoke to it a little bit in that. I mean, I don't know what Mark Pellington's relationship with them was, but you had a personal relationship with them.
And that was a
that had established over time.
I never knew why mine got shelved for years until, I want to say 15 years later, I was talking to the drummer, Dave Aberzees, who got fired from the band, from Eddie Vedder. But I was talking to Dave one time and just asked him, did he know why mine didn't get used? And he basically said that mine didn't get used because MTV, I think Pellington was working for MTV, and MTV went to Epic and Pearl Jam and said, we will play the shit out of that. We'll make that thing a hit if you let, us and Pellington do a video for it. So it was like a deal, not a payola in a sense, but a deal between the label management and MTV to make it a hit. And so they were like, yeah, because when I did it, they weren't going to release it as a single. when I made it, they're like, why are you doing this song? Because I think it's a great song, and it really it touched me. And I was like, I want to do the song. They're like, we're not going to release that as a single. And I was like, I don't care. I just want to do the song. So I was like, cool.
I also feel like that was a moment on MTV when they were really into the heavy-handed social commentary videos, like Runaway Train and I don't want to call Right Now social commentary, but that was.
That was before, I think.
It was before, but that's kind of like the.
It's the same type of video.
It's like MTV just was eating that up in the early 90s, and that would be like, this isn't just an up and coming band or the new huge band. This is an important video about runaways and how things are happening right now, and condoms
and there was Rock for Choice, and there was and Rock the Vote, and there was
gun violence,
and there's all these crazy things that everybody's getting. It was all anti-hair bands. It was all anti, heavy metal in a sense, because, that's always say, beginning of 91, and I write about this on my blog a lot, but beginning of 91, there was all this, Motley Crue, Warrant, whatever, that was a big deal. By the end of 91, it was like, who are these people? We don't care, because it was all Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, anything grunge was related. They took over the world, and all those poor little hair bands got the boot. And the good side of that was, the music had a little more of a substance, and it wasn't about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was about having a voice and saying something. It was all about angst and apathy and whatever. The downside was, I always said, because I was around both types of music and both the bands, was the downside was the grunge thing was boring. These guys, I don't think they knew how to have fun. Where the other bands, hey, there was girls and groupies and sex and drugs, and that was fun. I always tell people, Pearl Jam and all those bands, I think, came in and killed the party. But I got it. I understand. I liked it both, so it didn't bother me. And so, I think I get why MTV would do that. And I know they did a lot of that stuff during that time, because they had the power, and the labels would be like, yeah, okay, if you're going to make our song a hit, hell yeah, do a video. So I just think like I said, it's a good video that Pellington did. It won Video of the Year. I can't argue with that, but I just feel like it just doesn't represent the band at that time.
And it's super heavy-handed.
Yeah.
I have affection for it and everything, but it's so.
Are you a Pearl Jam fan?
A bit. Okay. I was more into Nirvana than Pearl Jam.
You have a particular relationship with the song Jeremy, don't you?
That's true.
Why?
It's my number one karaoke go-to.
Oh, okay.
It's very entertaining to watch.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll take that.
Well, you've seen me and all the things that I will do on karaoke, so.
I would never do karaoke in a million years.
Pearl Jam is basically that's kind of my range, is 90s dudes are what I like to, that's what I can just get up there and do.
Right.
And I, especially if there's a lot of emoting, like there is in Jeremy, I can get in there,
right.
I can get into it. And
I think, first of all, it's a brilliant song. It really is. And I remember the first time I heard it, because I had the advanced cassette. I just remember hearing that song and kind of going, I relate to it. I relate to the whole bullying thing. I relate to the whole those feelings. And here's the part of the story I always tell people, I've written about this. It was when I decided to do this and we were working on this, I shot it October, I just had the anniversary, 3rd and 4th of 91. It was 2 shoot days. September 26th, Jane's Addiction played their last show in Hawaii. They call it the last show because they broke up after that. But since then, they've gotten back together. But that was the last show they were breaking up. So I flew to Hawaii to see this last show and to shoot it. And I flew Eddie Vedder's girlfriend at the time, Beth, from Seattle to Hawaii to meet me there. I paid for everything. I just wanted somebody to be there to witness this great night. I wanted Eddie to go, but he couldn't go because he was working. And so Beth came, and we ended up saw the last 2 shows and spent 4 days in Hawaii, had a great time. But it was when I got there that Eddie, goes, I have a gift for you. I was like, okay, cool. And she gave me this little box. And I said, well, this is whatever. I'm thinking, it ain't money. This isn't going to help me. So I opened up the box, and inside is a note from Eddie saying something like this plants a seed in your brain, and da-da-da, because we were all going to meet back in LA at some point to do the video. And it's some little crazy little note, and inside is the actual article of Jeremy's from the newspaper that he wrote the song from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I have the actual article that he wrote the song from. And it's about this kid who goes into class and kills himself. And I was like, wow, okay, this is good. It's just good bit of inspiration. So I was
Absolutely.
so I was really cool about it. Then I went back to Seattle with her. I had to shoot Soundgarden. and for Reflex, I think it was. So I'm shooting Soundgarden, and this is all like during the time when they were making the movie Singles.
Right.
And I'm shooting Soundgarden, and I'm like, this is amazing. Soundgarden's great, and we're all talking about this stuff. Back up is prior to that, Eddie played this Cliff Pontier tape for me, which was, the make-believe Matt Dillon character.
Okay.
If you see the movie, there's this part where she has a cassette, and she puts it down and it says Pontier on it. Well, it had 5 temporary fake songs written on it. Well, Chris took that fake tape and turned those 5 fake songs into 5 real songs. One of them being Seasons, which was on the soundtrack, Spoon Man, and a bunch of other songs. He turned these into songs which appeared, whatever. So I heard Eddie had a demo of these songs from Chris, and he plays these demos, just demos, and I'm just like, this is the coolest thing ever. So when I see Chris, I say to him, hey, how can I get a copy of these demos? And Chris is all like, I didn't bring one with me, and they're demos. I don't know why you'd want them. I go, because they're amazing songs. Didn't think anything of it. So when we get to LA, and the first shoot day, we shot all the kids stuff. The second day we shoot the band, and when Eddie shows up to the band thing, he shows up and he brings a copy of the cassette from Chris. He said, this is from Chris. Gives me the copy of the tape, which I have to this day. And it was just amazing, nice little gift from Chris to do that. So there was all these great things happening like that during that. 91 was, I always tell you, one of the best years of my life, in that musically it was fucking brilliant. I saw so much, got so much, just amazing on every level. But those little things were like amazing when like Eddie would do things like that. He was really conscious of things like that. He was really unique, and we would do amazing things together and stuff like that. But it was cool. And I have that article, and every time I look at it, all these little things about that time every year. It's always like, I always tell people like, yeah. And it's like, not only, then when there's like, I can tell you like a million things. Like there was this period where like before the video, we had a meeting, and Eddie and I sat down and did all these drawings and written about it. And he was sketching stuff. I have all those original drawings, which are I've scanned them. They're on my site, for people to see. I have like all this original stuff from all that time. And it was really an amazing creative time. We were all having a great time. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, we were all angst and angry about shit, but we were having the best time ever. It really was. I always tell people like, yeah, we were all angry and punk rock and whatever, but it was a lot of fun because you're just doing shit. You don't care. You're just doing what you have to do. DIY, little punk rock attitude. So it was always fun. And like I said, and then the story was, like I said, we spent the $20,000 went by really fast because the joke was, so I said earlier that, we got 50 feet of film, turned it into 100 feet by going to 12 frames per second, thinking we'd save money. But no, we didn't know, because nobody bothered checking, that when you went to post-production, do you know what a telecine session is? Where you would take the film and transfer it to video. Okay, so the machine that you loaded this film on that transferred it to video can only do 12 frames a second at like 1 minute burst. It couldn't do, like, you couldn't put a roll of film up and just say, let it transfer it and let it go like you normally would. So a telecine session that should have lasted like 2 to 3 hours lasted 10. So all this money we saved, we thought we saved on film, went away in the telecine session. We all just sat there. Our telecine session went from like 7 at night till something like 6 or 5 in the morning. And I just remember sitting there, and who was the guy? This telecine guy was amazing. I'll think of his name. We went to this place called 525, and at the time they were the cool hip place to go. And they were, because like you would go, I would stop by there because they were by me, and I would stop by there any given day, and they'd have barbecue. Like back in those, I don't know what they do now, but I think they still do this. But like back in those days, you would go to these sessions at editing bays, and they'd bring food in, and you'd treat you like kings, and you'd like barbecue, and I'd sit there in the editing bay going, God, I could really use a chocolate milkshake. Can I get a chocolate milkshake? And like, 15 minutes later, a chocolate milkshake shows up. You're like, yeah, okay, good. What do you guys want about apple pie? Let's get some apple pie. And they would go get you apple pie. And
I have a very similar sort of setup with my editing thing, which is in my living room. I say these things to my wife, and I say, hey, a chocolate milkshake would be great. And she says, yeah, why don't you go get one? How about an apple pie? How about you go fuck yourself? Very, very similar setup.
Yeah.
Very, very much
totally
the same.
I get it.
So my place is now the hip.
Yeah, those days, there's still, those places are around. Post-production houses are all over the place.
Yeah.
But 525 at the time, they were on Santa Monica and and Cole, I think. And they were just amazing. And it was like you would just, and so we sat in there for like 10 hours and I just shaking our heads, all of us just going, should have got more film. Somebody should have asked about doing this. Why is this machine only doing a minute at a time? It was just, oh, sorry, Chris, technology at that time couldn't do that, and you're just sitting there just going, what a waste. There went our money. The so-called extra money we thought we had was like gone.
Well, it's one of those times where we still have those same problems today. It's just different.
Yeah.
It's different. It's because when you're shooting, the interests and the knowledge base is different than editing. Like they're very different disciplines. Now we have it mostly with people who are like, oh, we're going to shoot on red. Yeah. And it's like, do you have somebody who can edit red?
Right.
No, we'll find somebody.
But
will you find somebody?
Well, the other thing I always say to everybody is just that, what I call it is like the domino effect or the ripple effect, where you do something and most people don't think about what I call the back end.
Yeah.
The ripples. Like they just go like, hey, we're going to shoot 4K. Well, when I think of that, because Ted for my documentary was like, maybe we should do 4K. Yeah, but then all of a sudden I start thinking about how many more hard drives I have to buy because the footage is bigger. Then I have to start thinking about storage and I have to think about editing and all the other things that come with it. And most people just think like, oh, it's no big deal. It's 4K, it's 4K. You're like, no, it's more.
Well, that's what marks the difference between, either experience or just, producers versus like people who are just shooters.
Right.
And you need shooters. I'm a terrible shooter, but I'm a much better producer than most of the people I know that are shooters, because that's what you do. You just take the time and you go like, with the 4K thing, we've had that conversation, and you were the one who kind of, I think you called me about it, and you were like, but this is going to mean this stuff, right? And I'm like, yeah, it's
going to mean a lot more. I always tell people like I remember I did a small movie for somebody, and where they go, we're going to have to, it was right in the beginning of HD, like we have to shoot in HD, and I was like, okay, so the budget for this project was like $40,000, but I didn't have the post-production gear for HD, so I had to spend $10,000 of my own money to beef up my system so I could handle it all. And it was like, it was great in the end. I had a great system then all of a sudden, but like, you just have to, it's all that stuff. And then storage, like, I have like over 100 hard drives in my vault right now, filled with massive amounts of stuff. So it's a lot. It just adds up real fast, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Back in those days, we didn't think about some of that stuff, and we made our little mistakes, but it all worked out. We had everybody with such great support and help. I mean, propaganda films, I always say, give them all the props. They, I had just been a still photographer on their sets. I knew Michael Bay and David Fincher, those guys, and, in a sense, and they were just nice enough to say, okay, here's an editor and here's the editing bay. You have to come in at nights, but you can do whatever you want. That was like, we saved a lot of money, like a lot of money. So it made us run slow because we had to work around their schedule, but it didn't matter. There was no hurry because the label was like, we're not using this. And it was like, I don't care. Yeah. So, and in the end, like I said, I still think it holds up. God, do I think it holds up.
I think it holds up.
And for the end budget, which I still have all the paperwork, is like $25,000. And the label ended up coming to me at the end, was like, okay, we want it. We're going to take it. And I said, cool. And they reimbursed me for 20, and I never got the 5. To this day, Epic Records owes me $5,000.
You should call them up.
They're all gone. Everybody who worked there's gone. But like I said, at the end of the day, I did it for one reason, just to show that I can do it. And so I win, it's like, I don't, and as time's, it's 25 years later, I always say it's like, it's cooler because of that. I think anyways, but I think it's just like, it's much more special because it's that, it's that one that was, nowadays people bootleg it. I'm sure the label and the band's not happy that it's out there, but it's not my problem.
Also, you got to do things because you want to do it, not because you have an expectation for how it'll be received, because that's a great way to set yourself up for constant disappointment.
I learned that early on. I always tell people, end of the day, I shoot to make me happy. And maybe that's why I am who I am, but there was a period there in the 80s when, I first started working as a photographer, that you make your portfolio, and I'm sure you guys do too, where you start doing stuff because you want this client to like it. You want Rolling Stone to like it. I want, Esquire, and you start catering your portfolios and your work for everybody else. And it drove me crazy because I would come to New York here and I would go do a meeting, like a day of meetings was like 4 or 5 meetings. And, you show a portfolio to somebody and they'd go, oh, that's a great picture. The next meeting, the same picture would go like, that sucks. The next person, that's great. That sucks. And by the end of the day, you're a basket case going, is it good or is it bad? I don't know. Am I any good? Am I bad? You just don't know. And it fucked with my self-esteem, and it fucked with like, I go to my agents like, I thought these were good, and like, and why aren't they liking them? And you went crazy. And I think it wasn't until around the late 80s and early 90s where I just started saying, fuck everybody, I'm going to do what makes me happy, and I know it's good, and so it's up. If they don't like it, they don't like it. There's nothing I can do about it. And usually if somebody doesn't like something, I always will ask, well, what don't you like about it? And they 9 times out of 10 they can't even say. You know what I mean? So you ever hear people just say, oh, that song sucks, or that movie sucks, I hated that movie, and you're like, well, why? I don't know, I just hated it.
I don't know, because I'm hungry right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but it's like, I would say I'll take criticism because I've been criticized my whole life, but it's like you want constructive criticism is helpful.
For sure.
Well, and the other side of that is also like valuable criticism.
Yeah.
Or being able to like differentiate personally what's good criticism and what's like you just think you have to have an opinion criticism.
Right. And when I was younger, I took it all personal.
Yeah.
You take things like that when somebody says, I don't like this photo, or like, ooh,
It's tough not to.
It is. It's tough. And then you just, as you get older, like I said, I just don't listen to anybody. Yeah. I have one person in my life opinion that matters on my work. Everybody else, I would say that whether you compliment me or you say good or bad, it's nice. Thank you. Appreciate whatever. But it's only one person in my life that matters. His opinion matters the most because I've known him for 35 years and he knows my work better than anybody. Yeah. So when he says it's good, it's good. And when he says it's bad, and then I'll figure out what I need to fix. Yeah. Otherwise than that, everybody else, why would I listen to them? Yeah. Especially these days, I meet so many art directors and people that have like, were in junior high in 1991. You know what I mean? And they were like,
you're lucky they were in junior high.
Yeah, I get people all the time like, oh my God, I was in high school when Pearl Jam was out. And you're like, right, you were in high school. Great, appreciate that.
I was in elementary
where
school.
were you 25 years ago?
I was in middle school when Pearl Jam came out.
See,
I was in elementary school. So.
God, great.
91. Yeah, that was I was
13.
8 years old.
Wow, that's so not fair.
So.
12. I'm 4 years older than you.
But
that's crazy.
78.
Oh my God. So you're a graduate of high school.
Yeah. So yeah, you were 13 then, yeah?
Yeah.
12, 13, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm 83, so
yeah.
So you're fine.
Cool. We got that worked out.
Yeah, totally. This is a super important part of the podcast is how old are we?
How old are we? Sometimes I forget.
Yeah. I was, So you guys were just young little kids.
I wasn't listening to that music then. I was listening to like my folks' music. I was listening to like the Beatles, and I was listening to like 80s pop.
Okay.
And Queen, lots of Queen.
So you were in your school though, like Seattle kind of made an impact?
Oh yeah. That blew. I remember there was a rumor at one point, I think in between the first album and Versus, that Pearl Jam was going to play the Haunt, which was the club in my town. Mm-hmm. This was not a true rumor, but everybody was like, is it true or not? Yeah. Could it be? Oh my God, it's going to be so crazy. But there were like 2 years or so where Pearl Jam was the biggest band. I think it was like Pearl Jam and maybe U2. Yeah. U2 was really big too, but like cut across a lot of different lines, a lot of different people listened to that. I mean, I definitely had the first 2 Pearl Jam albums and was into them, more into Nirvana, but yeah.
Were you upset when like Nirvana and Pearl Jam were feuding? Did you pick sides?
I would have been on the Nirvana side of that feud. I wasn't. I think I was a little bit because I was a very sensitive kid, and that would happen sometimes with bands. There'd be conflicts. I'm like, can't we get along? And like Kurt Cobain, Eddie Vedder, I like you both. Like, don't fight. But I wasn't that upset about it. But
yeah, I think I always say I think I had a little part in mending that fence.
Ah.
Yeah. Crazy story. So I would hang out with Eddie a lot and his girlfriend Beth a lot, and we would do things together. And since I knew all these factions, and in Seattle at the time, it was you either punk rock or rock and roll, and the punk rockers were just like, we hate Alice in Chains, and we hate Soundgarden, and we hate, rock and roll Pearl Jam. And then there was like the punk rock, which was Nirvana and Mudhoney and Sub Pop Records, and there was this, and I would be sitting in the middle going, you guys are all idiots, like this is all good, so relax. And just one time, I remember I was with Nirvana and Courtney, of course, was bad mouthing Pearl Jam. And I just looked at her and said, you guys don't know them. And Eddie's a really, really nice guy. And I think you'd get along because he likes the band and he's, punk rock to the core, if that's what you guys are going to be snob about. And it just went on, and I tried to get her just to calm down, and she kind of did. And then, the feud was going on, and it was more from her than anybody. But and it was just it was the typical Seattle, childish kind of thing. And then finally one night out of nowhere, I get a call from Courtney Love asking me for Eddie's phone number. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll give it to you, but why are you calling him? Kurt wants to talk to him. I said, okay. So I gave him the number, and then next thing I know, they were all started making up, and they were on MTV hugging each other and all that crazy stuff
together, right?
Yeah, and I was just all like, there you go, started it off. And it's just I introduced Eddie to Mudhoney too at one time, and then a weeks later, Mudhoney was opening for Pearl Jam. So all that kind of stuff. I always tell people there was other better photographers up there doing all that stuff. Charles Peterson and Michael Levine here in New York was shooting the album covers. I was the guy. I was kind of an outsider, but I got along with everybody and just made sure that I'd always just sit there when people started bad mouthing other bands, be like, what's that all about? It's always, and it's just grow up. I always tell people to this day, there's a lot of artists that I like and I don't like their music, and there's a lot of people where I like their music and I don't like their art. It's vice versa. It's but either way, it's be nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be nice. It's rule number one.
It's the childish middle school mentality of needing to define yourself against somebody else, and in order to boost yourself up, put somebody else down,
and
really
those days too, which it was this whole punk rock attitude of anti everything, but at the same time you're if you're anti everything, the one thing you should be is supportive of everybody doing. You're supposed to be DIY, so they're doing their thing. Just might not be your music, and you might not go buy the album, but you should still be happy for them and support them.
Sure.
I don't know. I never understood that, because I grew up on all kinds of music. So I always tell people I wasn't even into punk rock until the late 80s. I didn't like Sex Pistols and Ramones or whatever that. It took me a long time to appreciate that stuff. So I still don't think it's the best music. So it was good though, but it was fun times, definitely. And I learned a lot and had the best time. So, and I got pictures.
The pictures to prove
just
it.
Just a couple. Yeah, and that's funny. Part of the Greatest Hits project is, in this last year, I always tell people to go to my blog as I write about these photos and I write about these moments. Coming up, anniversaries that I got coming up is I think December 11th is 25 years of shooting my first shoot with No Doubt, because I did their first album cover. And it's weird that I keep saying that I didn't realize at the time, but until I looked into it, it was oh wow, that was the end of kind of grunge started going down, and that's when No Doubt and that kind of thing was going on. And I look at my shoots, and you can see how certain things were going down and certain things were starting to sprout up in '92, and and then it went from there. So it's interesting. It's it's, I don't know. I always find this whole project has made me look back, which I don't like doing. I don't want to live in the past. I don't want to spend the rest of my life telling everybody I shot Nirvana, because I think it's stupid. I don't want to be that old guy. Hey, back in my day, I shot Nirvana. Who cares? It's not even my best work. So it's it's good, it's great, but it's not my best work.
But it's super interesting to look back with all this, with the time having passed, because you can see those things more clearly. When you're in it, it's hard to see the whole forest.
I tell that to everybody all the time. I more now than ever, because it's not like I've been shooting, because I've been shooting so long. I look back and I have lots. It's do you ever see that Steve Jobs commencement speech from Stanford? I recommend everybody to watch it. It's an amazing speech. It's the best speech ever that he ever gave. The only commencement speech he ever gave. And he talks in the speech, talks about connecting the dots, about how you can't connect the dots until you get old enough to look back. And when you get old enough to look back, you can see why things happened the way they did. And I always tell people, I know why I'm here today, exactly why I'm here today, and how I got here. I didn't know it then, but I knew why was I shooting music? I wanted to be a fashion photographer, and how I all of a sudden got into music. It's clear now, why I'm here doing all these things. And it's more now than ever, it's clearer. So I look back, and so I tell all my young friends, in 20, 30 years, when you guys get to look back, you'll go, oh, now I see the picture. I know why I am where I am. I know how else. That's why I say everything happens for a reason, and sometimes that reason doesn't show up. right away. It might take a year, it might take a decade for that reason to show up, but it's going to show up eventually. And so you do these things and you live this life and you kind of go through it all and you connect the dots. And that's why, like, doing this project, it had forced me to look back. And luckily I kept great records because I keep really good records on everything.
Well, you've got that whole storage space.
Yeah, I have a vault that I keep everything, but I also have I kept really good records, started in 1988, 89. Like, I can tell you what I did 25 years ago today. I can tell you where I was, what I was doing. What shoot, who was doing on shoot, who worked on the shoots. I just kept really good records.
I can barely tell you what I did yesterday.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like we're both fairly organized, but I'm like the opposite as far as like past stuff. I like get rid of stuff. I'm just like,
I do too.
I don't need it. I don't want it.
Yeah, I'm not. I get rid of a lot of stuff. I throw stuff away all the time. That's the thing on this project. I looked back and it was like, oh wow, I threw all my platinum records away, or I just got rid of all the vinyl collections and whatever. Well, what I ended up keeping was the article from Jeremy, or I kept postcards that I got from Eddie Vedder. I kept the strangest stuff that's now becoming part of this project. I kept all these really neat things that you'd go, wow, like, why did I keep this article? Why did I keep this letter that Eddie wrote me, a Christmas letter? Like, why did I keep, like, I kept all that weird stuff.
That's the unique.
Yeah, that's the person. Yeah, the personal stuff. So it was really, and again, for years I never looked at those boxes. I just had them in a box, all that stuff.
Right.
So all of a sudden, doing this project, I had to go, I'll pull these boxes, take them home, and start looking at stuff, going, why do I have all this stuff that I kept? And I did. I've like kept every postcard that I've ever gotten from anybody. It's really weird. I don't know why, but I did.
I keep mail. I do that too.
Yeah.
I have way too much of it, like filing drawers of just like letters, postcards, greeting cards.
I have a lot of that stuff too. Like I have all that stuff, and I have every, you saw in my videos, but like I have every ticket stub of every concert I ever went to, from my first one on, and so all that stuff, like I said, I look at it and it's kind of this junk, but because of this project, it's all like, wow, it's perfect. And we're trying to make a tour program that include it all. So it's like there's this memorabilia that I have that's very personal. There's a lot of great rock and roll memorabilia out there that a lot of people have, but I have my own personal stuff that is just unique.
Yeah. You come from you have a unique perspective on really the last like 30 years worth of music. 40 years almost. Because it goes back to, like, you started doing the music stuff in
I shot my
mid-80s?
first concert December 17th, 1976.
Okay.
Stanley Clark concert at Berkeley Community Theater. I did that. That was my first thing I shot. But that was all for fun. I took pictures in high school because it was fun. And I gave prints to all my friends and stuff like that. And I just got an email last week from somebody from high school saying he still had my prints. I was
That's awesome.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Nice.
I don't know what you can do with them. But
just waiting for you to
die.
Waiting for you to die. Sell them off.
But they're not signed, so he's bum out of luck. Yeah.
But speaking of firsts, we should maybe move on to the game, which is stolen from you. It's not really a game again.
I like my games.
It's the thing that you ask everybody when you shoot them. What was your first concert?
Yes, I asked that question of everybody. People have asked me, like, recently, because we're doing #FirstConcert. We have a series of videos at CuffaroHits.com where you can see people telling their stories. And so you guys got to tell yours. But my first concert was April 23rd, 1976, which was Return to Forever, a jazz fusion group with Chick Corea, Al Di Meola, Lenny White, and Stanley Clark. It was at in Berkeley at the Community Theater. And I was a huge jazz fusion fan back in those days. So it was a good concert. It was amazing. Loved it. Kind of seeing your first live performance. It's like, wow. And I was with my brother. So it was like, I was with the adults. So I'm like 15, I think it was, or not even 16. I was 16. And I was just all like, wow, I'm hanging out with the adults, like, ooh, my brother's smoking weed, kind of a thing, like, you're like, wow, that's cool. So that was kind of fun. Where's yours?
Am I next? I've been saying it was the Debbie Gibson Electric Youth Tour, and I want to say 88. But really, I'm sure I'd been to classical performances before then. Okay, we're not counting those, great. But I remembered that I definitely saw Tom Paxton, who, for listeners at home who don't know, is a lefty folk singer, contemporary of Bob Dylan's and whatnot in the Greenwich Village scene, who I'm pretty damn sure I saw him at either Cornell or Ithaca College when I was younger than the Debbie Gibson show.
But did you go? Why did you go to that show?
Because my family was going.
Okay, see that we don't.
Debbie Gibson was like, I want to go to this, and my whole family.
That's how we measure it.
Okay,
I've asked everybody I've ever shot since I've been shooting. I asked them what their first concert is, and I've heard great ones. Like I've had Grace Slick from Jefferson Airplane.
Oh, wow.
Her first concert was Elvis Presley.
Oh wow!
My friend Michael's was the Beatles at Boston Garden. Like I've heard such amazing stories. Debbie Gibson, in 1888, I shot her and hung out with her.
Nice.
Because I was doing all the George Michael's Faith tour.
And she was a big George Michael fan, as I remember, because I was a big Debbie Gibson
And I flew from. There's a great story here, but I'll tell you it quickly. I flew from LA to, George was going to perform with Aretha Franklin in Detroit, doing the song Knew You Were Waiting.
Okay.
The duet they did, the big hit. And we flew, the manager, Michael Littman, myself, and a famous music producer, Ron Nevison, I think it was. We flew on a private jet from LA to Milwaukee, picked up Debbie Gibson and her mom.
Yeah, sounds right.
And then flew to Detroit to go to sound check, shoot the show, hang out, do the whole thing, and then stay in a hotel. And the next morning we all flew back. We left Debbie there where they were going wherever, but then Michael and Ron and I flew back to LA. First time and only time ever on a private jet. Amazing. Then weeks and months later, I get to call, hey, Debbie's people want you to shoot her in this music video thing. And I did that, and I shot her there. Then another thing, some other little thing. Never really did like a full photo shoot. And I'm sitting there, the last time I ever saw her and shot her I was sitting on a table with her having lunch with her. Because she was really nice. I really liked her. She was really cool and really, really nice. And I just said to her, I was like, how do you have your mom manage your career? I go, I can't imagine my mother anywhere near my career. And I said it kind of loud enough that her mom sitting at the other end of the table heard me. Never saw them again after that.
Oh.
I didn't mind. I didn't care, but I was just like, because I still, to this day, like, can you imagine having your parents involved in your career?
No.
Like, would you want your mom managing?
No.
What about you?
A little bit of panic.
Mom? No?
No. She'd just be like, you're failing.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Like, you're a loser. You're good for nothing. And you'd be like, oh, great.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it right there.
I have a feeling my mom would be constantly very disappointed.
And I've been around lots of kid stars and kid actors and kid pop stars with their mothers around. And to this day, I still just like, why are you... Go get a life.
It troubles me.
Yeah, it does. But there's been good ones, though. There's been ones that are smart enough to stay out of the way.
Sure.
And I understand if your child is under 18... You've got to be there, and but it's like the smart ones don't stay out of the way and let the managers and so do their jobs. And if they do, you're fine. Be the mom. Don't be the manager. Yeah. Be the mom. Be the mom who cares and is there for their kid. But man,
it's taking care of the side that's not the business side.
Yeah,
because
the kid needs their
a parent.
Yeah, exactly.
To look out for them.
Yeah. Especially in that kind of situation.
And what are all the there's a million stories of a million crazy kid actors and singers that are all like basket cases to this day.
Oh yeah.
That are all messed up. Yeah. Hey, I shot Donny Osmond. It's a little weird.
Yeah.
And Michael Jackson and so on and so forth. A lot of weird ones out there. So your first concert?
My first concert. I wrote about it when we did the crowdfunding campaign.
That's right.
And I'm going to share that in the links there. But it was Aerosmith on... I pulled up my blog post while we were talking. Where is it? It was April 29th, 1998. It was Aerosmith is in Anchorage, Alaska, where I grew up. The Sullivan Arena, which I assume it's still there. Yeah. It was terrible place to see a concert. Like the acoustics are just shitty. Yeah. But it's also the only place really.
Probably, yeah. There's not a lot of choices in Anchorage.
But it was great. I was there with a friend, and we had to leave early because she had a curfew thing, and I can't remember. I want to say like Space Hog was the name of the band that opened for them.
That sounds very accurate.
And I don't know anything about them. Yeah. I can't remember anything about them. Yeah, but I feel like that's who they were.
They were slightly glammy, I think.
Probably. I don't remember.
Okay.
But they actually did 2 concerts that week, Aerosmith, because the first one sold out in like an hour. Like, they were very popular up there. I had several friends who were super into them at the time. They just had the 9 Lives album come out the year before, which I still think is a great album that nobody really remembers, because then fucking Armageddon came out, and I think that band just kind of disintegrated in a way. Yeah, they had 2 concerts, and I was at the second one. We had to go early, and then during that concert, I've looked it up when I was trying to learn a little bit more about this and remember this concert. Steven Tyler broke his ankle or injured his ankle seriously during that, and they had to cancel a bunch of shows after that. So we were the only ones who saw him for 6 months or so afterwards. So, but it's good. What I saw of the show was good. I think we saw half of their set.
That's a good first
before we had to go.
Concert, though.
Yeah, it's good. I love. For me, I haven't gone to a whole lot of concerts. I'm a big concert guy. The only other big concert I've gone to, not including bar shows and stuff like that, was Kiss, and that was a year later. And I haven't really been to one since, because 1, they're expensive, and 2, I want a show. I want a big show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And both Aerosmith and Kiss are going to give you a big show, even in a shitty little arena.
If you want a show, I would tell you someday go see U2.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They got fireworks and stuff.
They got they're
I like fireworks. The fireworks were really important. I got a good seat for Kiss.
Then go to a fireworks show. Go to Disneyland.
There were fireworks at that Guns N' Roses tour this past summer
Oh, that's right.
that Sean went to with our friend Conrad, and they were there were fireworks. I'm like, good. There should be a Guns N' Roses. It was in New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
It was at the whatchamacallit. I think it was at the place where I saw the Watch the Throne tour. I'm blanking on it, but it's big.
Yeah.
Indoors or outdoors?
Indoors.
Okay. It's now. How many people are actually back with Guns N' Roses? Is it an actual reunion, or is it just?
It's 3 main guys.
Just Slash and
Duff and Axl.
Duff is back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Slash, Duff, and Axl.
Okay, they're all back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay.
That's the core of the band.
That's enough. I was worried, because everybody talked about Slash was coming back.
Yeah.
And I don't think Duff and Axl had worked together since they broke up, had they?
No, Duff and Slash kind of always been together in that. If they came back, it was going to be them too. It was always, because they're the 3 guys are the core of the band.
Yeah.
The rest of the band, Adler was there, the drummer was there for a while, but then Matt Sorum took over, and now they have another drummer or whatever. But it was always those 3 guys are the main guys to and they're doing it, and they just made a few $1 million, and now they can not do it again for another 20 years.
Yeah. Just wait.
It's crazy.
Because what Axl Rose is now singing for AC/DC.
Yeah, well,
isn't that right?
He filled in for the tour because the singer got hurt.
Yeah, he filled in for Brian Johnson a couple months back, and people were referring to it humorously as Axl DC.
Yeah,
which is funny.
Totally.
But I was also I don't want to listen to Axl Rose do AC/DC songs.
I don't either.
He's not the voice that I want to hear for that.
It's confusing to me that Axl Rose would get hired to do a gig that's anything other than being Axl Rose, because he doesn't strike me as the most reliable guy.
Well,
to show up and do the thing.
Right. I think he's grown up a little bit from that, and I'm sure he was. I think it was his idea to help AC/DC, which I think is cool of him. So if it is, I'm assuming he stepped up and he was sitting on a chair most of the time anyways because of his broken leg. But I think he did what he did, and I think he did it well, and people still like it. I mean, people in this day and age, they'll pay for just about anything. And nowadays bands, it's amazing when there's 1 or 2 original members left in a band. It doesn't happen. I don't expect that to happen either. I don't expect, even look at the Rolling Stones. It's 4 guys original, and they're not even all original. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's 4 guys, and then every band's got a handful of guys that are left over. It's the bands that bother me is when you can't lose. If anything, a member you can't lose is the singer. Yeah. It's the problem, which I feel bad for, is In Excess.
Yeah.
Because they're one of my favorite bands, and those poor guys, they'd still be touring today if Michael was alive. And so, it's and they tried having a singer, and it just doesn't work. It's the one.
Well, and there's some bands that they cycle through them, but only a couple work. There's Van Halen.
Van Halen, too, I was thinking of
but
too.
Really, there's only 2 versions of Van Halen to listen to, and you can argue about whether or not.
You like Van Halen or Van Hagar? One or the other. And I'm a Van Hagar fan.
They're different bands. They're different bands.
Oh, totally.
I enjoy them both.
I think better songs from Van Hagar. I think Sammy's amazing. I think he brings more to the stage than just a clown. But I've had arguments with one of my best friends who's a huge Van Halen fan and cannot stand Sammy Hagar, and we argue about it for the last 20 years. And it's like we argue about who's better, what band's version's better, and I still say that Sammy Hagar, they just did better songs with Sammy Hagar because he's a better songwriter. So, but I love Diamond Dave.
He's fascinating.
I saw him his first solo tour. I saw it 3 times.
He sort of had a podcast for a little bit, which was just him sort of rambling into a microphone. I was listening to it a couple of years ago, and he was talking about because they were all random lengths too, and it was really just him telling stories.
I would be surprised.
And he starts telling the story kind of about why there's all this theatrical stuff in his early days with Van Halen, is because he grew up here in New York, and they would go to like cheap shows of Broadway shows, and they would see musicals and stuff like that, and he was a big fan of those, so he loved all this. So it all that early, like, you know, swinging across the stage and stuff all comes from, he just really likes musicals,
Broadway,
and he loves Broadway, and he's just like, this is great.
Makes sense, makes perfect sense.
But it's really entertaining to hear
he's a showman. That's like he wasn't the best singer, wasn't the best, in a sense, but he was a great performer and a great lead guy. I mean, some guys are out there that are just, I mean, I've done it for years. I've shot some lead singers. You're just like Perry Farrell. He doesn't have a voice. Anthony Kiedis doesn't have a voice, but it's like, man, they have that special something that
energy that you need to have to be like.
I
up
call
there
it
on
the
stage.
it factor.
Yeah.
And I've said this for years that certain artists I've shot, through the years, they have the it factor. Eddie Vedder, Fiona Apple, Michael Hutchins, Steve, Johnny Lydon, a lot of people out there that I call the it factor. And whatever they have, that it thing, I don't have it. I know I'll never have it, but whatever they have, it is special. My job is just to capture it. Whatever that it is, my job is just to get a photo of it. So.
Well said.
Absolutely. Well, with that,
I don't have it.
I don't have it. I don't know where it is.
Exactly.
I don't know who's got it. I don't know where to get it from. Well, with that, let's wrap up and just tell people one more time where they can find you.
On Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, it's Cuffaro Photo, Cuffaro Photo. And then on my websites are cuffarophoto.com, cuffarohits.com, and also cuffaroplus.com, which is all my new work.
Cool.
That's it.
And we're 4MileCircus. It's the number 4 followed by the word Mile Circus, all one word. That's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and also just 4MileCircus.com.
Yeah.
We'll talk to somebody else next time. I don't know who, but it'll be somebody. It'll be really cool. It probably won't have nearly as much interesting old person stories, but and I probably will be nicer to the future guest. So we'll talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice, and check out other 4 Mile Circus services and projects at 4MileCircus.com, as well as 4 Mile Circus on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Watch our first VOD release, Nicole's award-winning feminist phone sex horror comedy Small Talk, at 4MileCircus.com/store,